What if your constant anxiety wasn't just anxiety, but actually your ADHD in disguise? So many people think of ADHD as this thing that just means you're distractible, impulsive, or forgetful. But for a lot of us, it feels more like living inside a brain that never turns off. It's not just hard to focus, it's that your mind is constantly scanning for what might go wrong next. You wake up already on edge, your thoughts racing, your body tense. And sometimes you wonder if you've just developed anxiety, but what if it's something deeper? You see, the ADHD brain is wired differently. It doesn't regulate dopamine, the motivation and reward chemical, in the same way a neurotypical brain does. This can leave you swinging between hyperfocus and total shutdown, constantly chasing stimulation just to feel balanced. And when the brain struggles to predict or plan, it interprets uncertainty as danger. That's when the nervous system flips into survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze, even when nothing is really wrong. This is why so many people with ADHD live in a chronic state of over-alertness. Their nervous systems become conditioned to stay on, scanning for the next mistake, the next interruption, the next forgotten task. And over time, that constant tension starts to feel like anxiety. But underneath the worry is really a brain trying to find safety, stability, and control in a world that feels unpredictable. In this video, we're going to explore how ADHD and anxiety are deeply connected on a neurological level, and more importantly, how you can start calming your brain, regulating your nervous system, and feeling safe in your own body again. If you live with ADHD, you probably know what it feels like to be constantly on. Your brain races from one thing to another, your body feels wired, and even when you want to relax, it's like your system doesn't know how to hit the brakes. What's really happening beneath the surface isn't just mental chaos. It's a neurological tug of war between the parts of your brain designed to focus, regulate, and keep you safe. The ADHD brain struggles most in the regions that are supposed to help us slow down and make decisions, especially the SASA prefrontal cortex. That's the area right behind your forehead, the CEO of the brain. It handles attention, planning, emotional control, and impulse management. But in ADHD, that CEO is often underpowered. It's like it's trying to manage a busy office with half the lights out and constant phone calls ringing off the hook. So when stress or emotion hits, instead of calmly problem solving, the brain reacts. It panics. It floods the system with signals saying, "Something's wrong, do something now." Then there's the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. It detects threats, both real and imagined. For most people, the prefrontal cortex helps keep the amygdala in check, saying, hey, this isn't dangerous, we're okay. But with ADHD, the communication between those two areas is glitchy. The amygdala fires off easily, but the prefrontal cortex doesn't send enough calming signals back. The result, your nervous system stays on high alert, even during simple daily tasks. That's why a messy room or an upcoming deadline can feel as overwhelming as an actual emergency. And all of this plays out inside the GAS limbic system, the emotional core of the brain. This is where feelings like motivation, pleasure, frustration, and fear are processed. When dopamine, the neurotransmitter that helps regulate motivation and reward, doesn't flow smoothly, the limbic system struggles to find balance. Small challenges start to feel huge, and simple frustrations can trigger outsized emotional reactions. The world starts to feel unpredictable, and your body responds as if it's in danger. Because neurologically speaking, that's what your brain is telling it. It's like driving a car that has no brakes and a stuck gas pedal. You're trying to steer carefully through life, but your brain keeps accelerating. Reacting to every bump and turn as if it's a crash, you can't slow down enough to make thoughtful decisions, so you just brace yourself, gripping the wheel tighter, hoping not to spin out. That constant adrenaline, that feeling of being on all the time, that's the overlap between ADHD and anxiety. It's not two separate problems. It's one system caught in overdrive. Now, imagine that over years of living this way, your brain learns that being alert is being safe. The nervous system wires itself around vigilance. Even when nothing stressful is happening, your body keeps producing stress hormones. Cortisol, adrenaline, as if you're always under threat. You might notice your heart pounding during minor tasks, your muscles tense for no reason, or your thoughts racing at bedtime when everything is quiet. This isn't you being dramatic or weak. It's your brain trying to protect you. It just doesn't realize the danger isn't real. Because when your executive function, the part that helps you plan, focus, and regulate, isn't doing its job, the rest of your brain steps in to compensate. The amygdala becomes the boss, and that boss only knows one rule: be ready for anything. That's why ADHD can so easily look and feel like anxiety. Both come from a body living in survival mode, constantly bracing for what's next. So when people with ADHD say they feel anxious for no reason, it's not really for no reason. It's because their brain's internal alarm system never got the memo that they're safe. Their thoughts, their emotions, even their physical sensations are shaped by a nervous system that's been conditioned to react first and think later. Anxiety, then, isn't always a separate disorder sitting on top of ADHD. It's often the body's response to the internal chaos that ADHD creates. It's what happens when an overstimulated, under-regulated brain spends years trying to manage the unpredictable world around it. The brain isn't broken. It's overprotective. It's doing its best to keep you safe in the only way it knows how, by staying on guard. But the good news is that once we understand this connection, we can start teaching the nervous system a new pattern. One that replaces hypervigilance with calm, and constant alertness with true safety. One of the biggest keys to understanding why ADHD so often feels like anxiety lies in how the brain manages dopamine, the neurotransmitter that fuels motivation, reward, and focus. In a neurotypical brain, dopamine flows in a steady rhythm. You get a little boost when you complete a task, a sense of reward when something goes well, and a gradual return to calm afterward. But in the ADHD brain, dopamine signaling is irregular. Too little when you need it most, and sudden bursts when something exciting or urgent appears. It's like trying to drive a car that sputters, stalls, and then suddenly shoots forward. You never quite know what to expect, so your system stays on edge, scanning for the next surge. That unpredictability creates an internal restlessness that can easily be mistaken for anxiety. When dopamine is low, the brain feels understimulated, almost bored to the point of discomfort. So it starts hunting for stimulation, a new idea, a distraction, a bit of drama, anything to wake it up. This can look like overthinking, doom scrolling, or bouncing from one task to another without finishing any. Your body may feel jittery or tense, not because something's wrong, but because your brain is trying to generate enough internal energy to stay engaged. Imagine your brain as a smoke detector that's been wired to go off whenever it senses silence. It's constantly asking, "Vah, am I missing something important?" That scanning mechanism keeps you alert, but also keeps your nervous system from ever resting. Over time, this hypervigilance starts to feel exactly like anxiety, racing thoughts, tight muscles, shallow breathing. Even when there's no real danger, your brain has simply learned that vigilance equals safety and stillness feels threatening. This is where dopamine's relationship with focus and reward becomes so important. Dopamine is released when you experience a sense of progress or anticipation of success. But when the ADHD brain struggles with organization or follow through, it doesn't get that steady reward feedback. Tasks pile up, and instead of small, satisfying hits of dopamine, you get a flood of guilt, frustration, and stress hormones. That's the cycle. Low dopamine leads to avoidance, which leads to more stress, which then triggers more anxiety like tension. Medication can play a powerful role in interrupting this loop by improving dopamine signaling, not by adding stimulation, but by smoothing out the roller coaster. Stimulant medications like methylphenidate or amphetamines don't create artificial focus. They help the brain access dopamine more efficiently, which reduces the need to chase stimulation or stay hyperalert. When dopamine levels stabilize, it's like finally putting a governor on that sputtering engine. The car can move forward smoothly without constant jerks and surges. But medication isn't the only way to regulate dopamine. The ADHD brain also responds beautifully to structure, movement, and meaningful reward cycles. Physical activity, especially rhythmic movement like walking, cycling, or dancing, naturally increases dopamine and norepinephrine, which calm the nervous system while sharpening focus. Even short bursts of exercise throughout the day can act like a natural reset button. Structure works the same way. When your environment is predictable and your tasks are broken down into manageable chunks, the brain doesn't have to keep scanning for what's next. Each small success creates a dopamine hit, which reinforces safety and progress. That's why to-do lists, visual reminders, or habit trackers can be so powerful for people with ADHD. They turn abstract chaos into visible momentum. And then there's the reward system, something the ADHD brain thrives on. It's not about bribing yourself to get things done. It's about teaching your nervous system that effort leads to satisfaction. That might mean celebrating tiny wins, giving yourself permission to enjoy breaks, or building pleasurable activities into your day as part of your rhythm. The key is to keep your dopamine flow steady and responsive rather than letting it crash or spike unpredictably. Over time, these practices teach your brain that it doesn't have to stay in overdrive to feel alive. You don't need to chase stimulation or stay anxious to stay alert. When dopamine is balanced, whether through medication, movement, or structure, the brain starts to trust calmness. It realizes that focus and safety can exist together. And here's the truth: the goal isn't perfection. You're not trying to fix your brain or eliminate every restless thought. You're helping it find balance, enough stimulation to stay engaged, but enough regulation to rest. Because a calm brain isn't a boring brain, it's a safe one. And when the ADHD brain finally feels safe, it no longer needs to live in a state of constant alertness just to survive. One of the most exhausting parts of living with ADHD is the constant tug of war between knowing what to do and being able to do it. You can have the clearest plan in your head, the best of intentions, and still find yourself frozen, staring at the pile of tasks that never seem to shrink. And that paralysis doesn't come from laziness. It comes from executive dysfunction, the brain's difficulty with managing, organizing, and initiating action. But what often follows is even more painful: the anxiety that builds as unfinished tasks pile up and self-criticism takes over. Executive functions are the mental tools we use to plan, prioritize, start, and finish things in a well-regulated brain. These skills are supported by steady dopamine flow and good communication between the prefrontal cortex and the deeper emotional centers. But in the ADHD brain, that signal is inconsistent. It's like trying to run your life from a computer with a slow processor and too many tabs open. Everything lags. You know what you need to do, but your brain can't seem to move from thought to action. And that gap, the distance between intention and execution, is where anxiety thrives. At first, the ADHD brain responds to that overwhelm by ramping up. You might start mentally spinning, "I need to do this, I should have done that, why can't I just start?" The mind loops, searching for control, but that overthinking actually makes the prefrontal cortex shut down even more. It's like revving an engine when you're stuck in mud. The harder you try to push forward, the deeper you sink. Eventually, that tension turns into paralysis. You freeze, scroll your phone, distract yourself, or avoid the task completely, not because you don't care, but because your nervous system is flooded. And once you're stuck, the self-criticism starts. You tell yourself you're lazy, undisciplined, or broken. That inner voice, though, doesn't motivate change, it deepens shame. The limbic system interprets that shame as a threat, keeping the body in fight or flight mode. Your heart races, your chest tightens, and the thought of starting feels even scarier. The result is a vicious loop. Overwhelm leads to inaction, which leads to guilt, which creates more anxiety, which makes it even harder to act. This loop doesn't mean you're incapable. It means your brain is overloaded. The ADHD brain has trouble managing internal noise. It struggles to filter distractions, hold priorities, and calm emotional responses at the same time. So instead of moving step by step, it gets stuck trying to solve everything at once. And when everything feels urgent, nothing feels possible. Breaking this cycle starts with helping the brain feel safe enough to start small. Visual planning tools can be incredibly grounding here. When tasks live only in your head, they feel infinite and abstract, a fog of too much. But when you externalize them on paper, a whiteboard, or a visual app, the brain can finally see them as concrete and manageable. Color coding, sticky notes, or visual timelines aren't childish. They're neurological supports. They give your brain a way to hold information outside of working memory, freeing up mental space for action. The next key is as body-based resets. When you notice yourself spiraling into overwhelm, pause and do something physical. Even if it's just standing up, stretching, or taking 3 slow breaths with your exhale twice as long as your inhale. This simple shift signals safety to your nervous system. It moves your body out of the freeze response and back into a state where planning and decision making are possible again. Movement literally tells the brain, we're not in danger anymore. Then focus on as tiny wins, micro actions that create momentum and rebuild trust with yourself. The ADHD brain thrives on quick feedback loops. When you finish a small step, even something like opening a document, putting one item away, or sending one email, dopamine releases, and your nervous system relaxes. That small success gives your brain a sense of progress, which is the antidote to paralysis. The goal isn't to do everything, it's to do something. Each tiny win rewires your brain's association between effort and success, Teaching it that action feels safe, not overwhelming. Over time, these small strategies retrain your brain's sense of competence. You start to internalize a new message. I can handle this. That's the opposite of anxiety. Anxiety thrives in uncertainty and helplessness, while confidence grows from repeated evidence that you can start, move, and finish things even imperfectly. The truth is, executive dysfunction doesn't mean you're broken or lazy. It means your brain's control center needs more support to transition from chaos to calm. By externalizing your thoughts, grounding your body, and celebrating micro-progress, you help your nervous system rediscover stability. You teach it that the world, and your own effort, isn't something to fear. And when your brain starts to feel safe in action, anxiety naturally begins to fade, replaced by a quiet kind of trust, the feeling that you can start again, one small step at a time. For many people with ADHD, the world doesn't just look or sound busy. It feels overwhelming. The lights seem a little too bright, the background noise is a little too loud, and even emotions, both your own and other people's, can hit with surprising intensity. It's not just distraction, it's sensory overload. The ADHD brain processes incoming information differently, and that sensitivity, while sometimes a gift, can also keep the nervous system on high alert, as if it's always bracing for the next wave of stimulation. In a typical brain, sensory filters help decide which sights, sounds, and sensations deserve attention and which can fade into the background. But in the ADHD brain, those filters don't work as efficiently. Everything comes in at once. The flicker of a screen, the hum of a refrigerator, the emotional tone in someone's voice. And the brain struggles to prioritize. It's like standing in the middle of a crowded room where every person is talking directly to you at the same time. You can't tune it out, so your nervous system ramps up, trying to manage the overload. This sensory intensity doesn't just exist in the 5 physical senses. People with ADHD often experience emotional hypersensitivity too. A small criticism can feel like a deep wound. Someone's frustration in the room can feel like it's your own. Your brain isn't imagining it. It's simply registering more data from your environment than most people do. That heightened awareness can make life vivid, creative, and empathetic, but it can also make ordinary days exhausting. When the brain constantly receives too much input, it keeps this sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, switched on. Your body stays in a subtle state of readiness, muscles tense, breath shallow, scanning for what's next. Over time, this constant activation starts to feel like background anxiety. You might not even realize you're in survival mode, because it's been your baseline for so long. This is why many people with ADHD describe feeling keyed up or on edge, even in calm situations. Their body has learned that calm doesn't last. To begin retraining this system, we need to help the body experience safety through sensory grounding and nervous system regulation. One simple yet powerful approach is through deep pressure, things like weighted blankets, tight hugs, compression clothing, or even leaning your back against a wall. Deep pressure activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and digest response. It tells your brain, you're safe now. This is why so many people instinctively wrap themselves in blankets or seek physical comfort when stressed. It's not weakness, it's self-regulation. Another grounding strategy is to use your senses intentionally rather than being hijacked by them. Try naming what you can see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. Slowly, deliberately, one sense at a time. This helps redirect your attention from the flood of sensory input to a controlled, present experience. You're showing your brain that it can observe the environment without being overwhelmed by it. Mindfulness breaks also help regulate sensory overload. For the ADHD brain, long meditations can feel impossible, but short, body-based pauses like feeling your feet on the floor, focusing on one slow breath, or watching a candle flame can create small moments of calm. These micro-mindfulness practices train the nervous system to tolerate stillness. Over time, that tolerance becomes resilience. Movement can be grounding too. When sensory energy builds up, the body needs a release. Stretching, walking, shaking out your hands, or doing rhythmic motion like rocking or swaying can discharge excess activation. Think of it like resetting the pressure valve in your system. Most importantly, it's vital to reframe sensory sensitivity as a trait, not a flaw. The same brain that gets overwhelmed by noise and emotion is also the one that notices subtle details, reads people deeply, and connects dots others might miss. Sensory intensity is part of the ADHD brain's heightened way of being in the world, both its challenge and its strength. The goal isn't to numb that sensitivity, It's to help your system regulate it so it doesn't feel like a constant threat. By learning to soothe the nervous system through deep pressure, grounding, and mindful sensory awareness, you're not avoiding stimulation. You're teaching your brain how to stay balanced in the middle of it. Each time you practice calming your body, you send the message. We can experience intensity without danger. Over time, your baseline begins to shift. The world still feels vivid and alive, but it no longer feels like too much. Sensory sensitivity isn't a weakness or a flaw to fix. It's a form of neurodivergent wisdom. Your brain takes in more, feels more, processes more. The work isn't to shut that down, but to create enough internal safety that your sensitivity can become your strength instead of your stress. When your body trusts that it can pause even for a moment, the noise of the world softens, and your mind can finally rest inside that quiet. If you live with ADHD and anxiety, you probably know what it feels like to exist in a body that's always on. You're alert, tense, scanning, overthinking, like there's a motor humming in the background that never quite turns off. The Polyvagal theory helps explain why this happens. It shows us that anxiety and ADHD aren't just mental conditions, they're deeply tied to how our nervous system interprets safety and threat. When your body feels unsafe, your brain follows, and focus, calm, and motivation become almost impossible. At the center of this system is the zasis vagus nervus, the longest nerve in the body, running from the brainstem through the heart, lungs, and gut. It helps regulate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for rest, digestion, and restoration. When your vagus nerve is active, your body feels safe and relaxed, your heart rate slows, your breathing deepens, and your mind opens up to connection and creativity. But when the vagus nerve is underactive, your body can get stuck in sympathetic dominance, the fight or flight mode. And for people with ADHD, that's often the default setting. Because the ADHD brain struggles with predictability and self-regulation, the nervous system learns to live in constant readiness. Every noise, mistake, or interruption can feel like a small emergency. That constant hyperarousal, the overactive sympathetic state, keeps adrenaline flowing and muscles tight. You might call it anxiety, but it's really a physiological pattern. Your body is saying, stay alert, something could go wrong. It's exhausting, and it makes focusing or relaxing feel like fighting against your own biology. Polyvagal theory helps us understand that regulation comes eyes from the body up, not the mind down. You can't think your way out of fight or flight. Logic doesn't convince the nervous system it's safe. Sensation does. That's why grounding techniques and body-based tools are so essential for people with ADHD and anxiety. They activate the ventral vagal state, the branch of the nervous system associated with calm, connection, and curiosity. The exact state your brain needs for executive function, learning, and creativity. One of the simplest and most effective tools for activating the vagus nerve is slow exhalation. When you extend your out breath, for example, inhaling for 4 counts and exhaling for 6, you signal safety to your heart and lungs. The body interprets this longer exhale as evidence that there's no danger. Over time, this retrains your system to downshift out of hyperarousal. A humming or singing works the same way. The vagus nerve passes through the vocal cords and the muscles of the throat, so gentle vibration stimulates it directly. This is why people instinctively hum when they're stressed. It's the body's built-in way of self-soothing. Even a quiet hum, a sigh, or softly chanting can lower your heart rate and release tension. Movement is another powerful vagal regulator. Rhythmic, gentle motion, like walking, rocking, stretching, or swaying, calms the nervous system by sensing breath and body together. When you move rhythmically, your brain receives the message: if we're not frozen, we're safe enough to move. This interrupts both the hyperactive fight or flight and the shutdown freeze response that often follows burnout. Warmth also plays a quiet but powerful role. The vagus nerve is sensitive to temperature changes, especially warmth around the chest or face. Wrapping yourself in a blanket, sipping a warm drink, or taking a hot shower can bring immediate grounding. These small physical cues tell your body it's cared for, that you can rest even for a moment. It's easy to think that success or productivity should come first, that if you could just focus harder, you'd finally calm down. But polyvagal theory flips that idea upside down as regulation comes before productivity, safety comes before success. When your body feels safe, your prefrontal cortex, the thinking, planning part of your brain, comes back online. Focus, creativity, and motivation flow naturally because they no longer have to fight against survival mode. So the next time your brain feels scattered or anxious, try starting with your body instead of your thoughts. Take a slow breath with a long exhale. Hum softly. Wrap yourself in warmth. Move gently. These aren't small coping skills. They're powerful signals to your nervous system that the threat has passed. When your body begins to believe it's safe, your mind follows. And that's when everything starts to shift. You don't have to fight your brain to focus. You just have to calm your body enough for your brain to come home. In that calm, the ADHD mind can finally do what it does best. Connect ideas, create freely, and engage fully with the world. Regulation doesn't just quiet anxiety, it unlocks your potential. One of the most powerful and hopeful truths about the ADHD-anxiety connection is that your brain is not fixed. It can change. Through the process of neuroplasticity, the brain is constantly reshaping itself in response to what you practice and experience. That means that even if your nervous system has spent years stuck in survival mode, alert, restless, and anxious, it can learn a new pattern. The same brain that learned to live in stress can learn to live in safety. Every time you calm your body, take a mindful pause, or complete a small task, you're not just managing symptoms, you're teaching your brain what safety feels like. When your nervous system experiences repeated moments of calm, the neural pathways associated with stress begin to weaken, and new pathways for focus and relaxation grow stronger. Over time, your brain starts to default not toward hypervigilance, but toward regulation. It learns that peace isn't the absence of stimulation, it's the presence of balance. Think of it like training a skittish animal to trust again. You don't do it with force or pressure. You do it with consistency, gentleness, and repetition. The ADHD anxiety brain has learned that the world is unpredictable and that vigilance equals survival. Neuroplasticity allows you to teach it something different, that safety can be predictable too, that it's possible to live with energy and curiosity without constant tension. One of the most effective ways to begin this retraining is through Oz daily rituals. Small, repeatable actions that signal safety and stability. These rituals don't need to be complicated. They can be as simple as waking up and stretching before you check your phone, lighting a candle before work to mark the start of focus time, or setting a consistent bedtime routine that tells your body, we're winding down now. Repetition is what rewires the brain. When your nervous system knows what to expect, it stops scanning for danger. Mindfulness is another key practice in this rewiring process. For people with ADHD, mindfulness doesn't have to mean long, silent meditation. It can mean noticing your breath for 30 seconds, observing the warmth of your coffee, or feeling your feet on the ground before you start your day. Each time you pause and bring awareness to the present, you interrupt the habitual stress loop that keeps your brain on high alert. You're teaching your mind that stillness isn't unsafe, it's restorative. Supporting as dopamine balance is also essential. Structure, movement, and rewards all play a role in stabilizing this system. Create small, achievable goals that allow you to experience success frequently. Movement, especially rhythmic or bilateral movement like walking or swimming, increases dopamine and serotonin naturally. Build short bursts of movement into your day to release tension and refresh focus. And allow yourself genuine enjoyment, music, laughter, creativity, play, because these moments tell your brain that life isn't just about survival, it's about connection and pleasure. Sleep is another foundation of neuroplastic change. When you're chronically under-rested, the brain's ability to regulate emotions and store new learning collapses. Building a wind-down ritual, dimming lights, disconnecting from screens, listening to calming sounds isn't just about rest. It's a signal to your vagus nerve and limbic system that the day is ending and you're safe to let go. Consistent, restful sleep gives the brain the resources it needs to heal and grow. But perhaps the most transformative ingredient in retraining the brain is, say, self-compassion. The ADHD anxiety brain has likely lived under years of criticism, both external and internal. You might have learned to motivate yourself through pressure, guilt, or fear of failure. But those strategies only reinforce the survival response. Self-compassion, on the other hand, quiets the threat system. When you replace "what's wrong with me" with "this is hard, but I'm learning," you immediately change your brain chemistry. You activate neural circuits that foster regulation and growth instead of shame and panic. Each time you practice calm, structure, rest, or kindness, you're adding a new brick to the foundation of a safer internal world. It won't happen all at once. The nervous system learns slowly through experience, not force. But the change is real. One mindful breath, one completed task, one good night of sleep. These are not small things. They are the language your body understands when you say, "You're safe now, and your ADHD anxiety brain isn't broken. It's just been doing its best to survive in overdrive." With practice, patience, and compassion, you can help it learn something new, that focus can come from calm, not chaos, that safety can exist without hypervigilance, and that you are allowed to feel steady. Your brain isn't waiting for perfection. It's waiting for repetition. Every time you show it safety, it learns a little more how to live there. And one day, you'll notice that peace doesn't feel foreign anymore. It feels like home.